Shabbat Shalom. Thanks, Paul. Hey, thanks, Catter Whitner. Inside joke since March. There's only a few other people who would get that, but there's a great rabbinic teaching. Our rabbis tell us that 9 rabbis, they can't make a minyan, but 10 shoemakers can. Of course, this is a good reminder for clerical humility. But our rabbis especially wanted us to focus on what matters the most in Judaism. That, of course, is community. And when we examine the history, the bevy of Jewish literature, especially 1800 years ago, our rabbis always wanted us to be together. And when we are together, our rabbis especially wanted us to be in a synagogue, and after all, synagogue is a Greek word which means assembly place or a place to gather. And if we can't be in a synagogue to pray, our rabbis would tell us, go near a synagogue and face the synagogue in order to pray. See, a synagogue is not just a home for collective Jewish ritual, praxis, and worship. It's our gathering place. It's our place to experience the joys of our tradition, the joys of our celebrations. It's a place where we celebrate. It's a place where we mourn. It's a place where we are all together. For the past really long 4 months, a pandemic has utterly paused this rabbinic concept of a synagogue. We've all been isolated in our homes, many of us isolated from our work, isolated from our friends and families, and therefore this isolation, because of this pandemic, has caused us to create alternative models for Jewish ritual. We are streaming and Zooming services, and not to mention so many of us had this Zoom Seder and other virtual experiences. We use the virtual realm to have education classes, Torah study, and so many of you participated in our pre-neg and oneg on Zoom, and even last month we watched a movie together on Zoom. But I feared that this Zooming and virtual experience, it was fun, but it would lose its novelty. And toward the end of May, things were looking a little bit better with regard to the virus. And we began to process the idea of having a safe opening July 1st, especially as we welcome the witness to our family. I've heard so many of you, you miss the Kedusha, you miss the holiness of the space. You miss the feel of the pew while holding the prayer book in your hands. You miss the music to uplift you, our liturgy to inspire us. But most importantly, we miss being with each other. We needed each other to lift us up from our isolation, to kibitz, to sit together in the pews reflecting on the week, discussing our summer plans, because after all, as science clearly teaches us, being with people is a good thing. It lowers our stress, it makes us happier. And Friday nights and Saturday mornings, I so desperately wanted us to come and be together. And moreover, during these past 4 months, I was thinking of all our B'nai Mitzvah families who had to postpone their date. All of you have worked so hard to get to this moment, sat in uncertainty of not knowing when that date was going to be. And something that I'll talk about on Erev Rosh Hashanah, but for those people who lost a loved one, and how this pandemic has utterly crippled our ability to comfort the mourner, especially during Shiva. Life cycles, especially when we're together, it's a time to celebrate, It's a time to mourn, and it's a time to embrace. But then reality sank in this past month. After looking at the numbers and the increase, the leadership and I made the painful decision to pause high holiday services in person and reevaluate as to when we can enter into this building as a collective holy body around mid-October. Pikuach nefesh, saving one's life supersedes any of the commandments. And that is our number one obligation to our temple family. This place is a spiritual home and refuge for so many of you. And we will never do anything that would jeopardize your health for being here. But nevertheless, this is still incredibly painful. And again, I want to speak to those who are facing a passing, to those B'nai Mitzvah families who once again have to cancel their dates. And again, this continuation of the isolation. And our heart goes out for those who are suffering from this illness, to those who have lost their jobs, the businesses, schools, and not to mention the depression, the anxiety, those who suffer from addiction because they are in isolation. We are thinking of you, and we hope to God that this will soon come to an end. And most cantors and rabbis, we are trying to process as to what the high holidays will look like this year. Most of us are all going virtual, and many of us are trying to provide the cutting-edge content, the program to elevate our high holiday experience despite its limitations. I understand our realities. I wonder as to how many of us can sit through a 2-hour service on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And I always tell my return students, those who convert to Judaism, the best thing about celebrating the high holidays, especially on Yom Kippur, is being at the synagogue, being here all day, taking in the liturgy, the Torah service, the classes. You get to feel the essence and power of this day even more when we are here together reflecting on the past year. And now, we don't get to have this experience. And therefore, I want to state the following while understanding our limitations. Cantor Whitner, I, our staff, we have already begun to process and plan our high holiday experience. The music will still be as incredible. I promise my sermons will be extra long for your enjoyment. I'm just kidding. We're working hard with our incredible and generous partners at the Grafman Endowment Fund to enhance our worship experience as we endeavor to add many cameras in a sanctuary to get better angles and better positions. And something that I'm really proud to announce, that we have already procured an incredible scholar from Israel who will zoom in the afternoon study session to teach us all what's going on in the state of Israel. And soon we can't wait to hear from you with our focus groups, because we want to make sure these services complement your spirituality. But during my installation, which seemed so long ago, during the first week of February, I told this congregation, that we will have difficulty with the novelty, difficulty with the new. There'll be new voices, new ideas, new music, new programs, and also new prayer books. Mishkan HaNefesh, our high holiday prayer book that we are going to for this high holiday season. And we are going to this prayer book even during a pandemic. The goal of a clergy member is to challenge our congregation. It's to comfort our congregation and to help us find meaning from our experiences. Mishkan HaNefesh will help us so much more because it clearly understands the situation that we are going through. I could easily speak to the fact that this new prayer book has transliteration, gender-neutral language, inclusivity, modern readings, explanation, and footnotes as to why we do our rituals, and the fact that we are using the same High Holiday prayer book for the majority of Reformed congregations in North America. This should be a given. But for our situation, what we have faced these past 4 months, Mishkan HaNefesh can help us find meaning of these 4 months. This prayer experience will be more meaningful because how our prayer book will give us the comfort and inspiration. And as your rabbi, I feel I have the Jewish responsibility to introduce us to Mishkan HaNefesh more than ever. Change will always be difficult. Change will always be difficult even during a pandemic. But I'm always hopeful that with the right change can always lead to a better path for all of us. Ken Whitner, Dr. Mosteller, we will miss you terribly during these high holiday experiences. But even during Judaism's most darkest hours in our existence, and during these hours when we too have to stop in-person services because of a pandemic, or because our enemies did not allow us to celebrate, we always took that time during Elul and Tishrei to examine, to process, to engage in introspection. We still have to ask ourselves what worked in our life this past year, what didn't work. We still are obligated to examine our limitations and how we can find the courage to repair broken relationships to heal our soul. During this time in Elul and Tishrei, we still get to talk with God. We still get to challenge God. We get to stop. We listen. And we're able to find that still, small voice that always gives us hope. We won't be here in person, but Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, they will still stand. We will still have this intense reflection and introspection process, even with social distancing. And my charge to our Temple Emanu-El family is to engage in our responsibility to reflect. And perhaps we don't need a shul to do this for individual and communal reflection. We just need our honest selves and improve us and our community. This is always the holiday spirit. And the best thing about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is not only do we get a second chance, we get a third chance, a fourth chance. We always have the ability to change our lives for Teshuvah. In a way, we get to edit the book of life because we have that responsibility to change anew. And therefore, as I conclude with tonight's remarks, I want to share with you a perfect reading from our new High Holiday prayer book, which is right here, that really speaks to us and our ability to change our brokenness to repair our souls. And this is written by Rabbi Laura Geller, Emeritus at Temple Emanu-El in Beverly Hills. Your book of life doesn't begin today, on Rosh Hashanah. It began when you were born. Some of the chapters were written by other people, your parents, siblings, and teachers. Parts of your book were crafted out of your experiences you had because of other people's decisions. Where you lived, what schools you went to, what your homes were like. But the message of Rosh Hashanah, the anniversary of the creation of the world, is that everything can be made new again. That much of your book is written every day by the choices you make. The book is not written and sealed. You get to edit it, decide what parts you want to emphasize and remember, and maybe even which parts you want to leave behind. Shana Tova means both a good year and a good change. And today can be the change of the rest of your life. It's never too late. And during the pandemic, it is certainly never too late. Shabbat Shalom.